The Bible, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. Basic Instructions.
And now, here's our presenter, Gabriel Savant.
Bob Walker, a certified chaplain in the United States, is joining us here at NPR 105.3 FM to share his expertise and historical studies of at least one very logical reason why the Lord chose that the New Testament was written in Greek instead of in the Hebrew language. Chaplain Bob Walker, welcome to NPR. Chaplain Bob, why do you believe that the books that we have in the New Testament were penned in the Greek language versus Hebrew, even though all of the New Testament writers, except for Luke, were of Jewish ethnicity?
The Old Testament was written in Hebrew for the most part. However, the New Testament, the Lord rejected the use of the Hebrew and used Greek. Just a little background information. In the days of Moses, they spoke Hebrew, that's what they used. The law, the books of Moses, the prophets, all of that was in Hebrew. Now, when we get to the New Testament times, Hebrew was just spoken by basically some of the scholars. Then you had some people that spoke Aramaic, which was a cousin of Hebrew. But the main language of commerce in the days of Jesus was Greek, because Alexander the Great, a great Greek general, had conquered basically from part of India, the Mediterranean, the whole area. When you conquer an area, the people learn your language. That's just how it is.
Luke, who was a Gentile, obviously he wrote his Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles in the Greek language. That makes all the sense in the world. In fact, Chaplain Bob, the author of more books in the New Testament than anyone else, and that would be the Apostle Paul, he, of course, was a missionary to the Gentiles, which is another logical reason why Paul would have written all of his letters in Greek.
Paul knew all three. Paul could speak Hebrew, Paul could speak Greek, and Paul could speak Latin since he was a Roman citizen.
Now, a minority of people assume that the New Testament was written in Hebrew, but where is the proof for this? Zero proof. Don't you two find it rather strange that no copies of the New Testament written in Hebrew or even in Aramaic from the early centuries after Christ are to be found on the earth today? I think it's totally inconceivable, if not flat out absurd, that if the original copies of the New Testament had been written in Hebrew or some Hebraic language, that there would not be at least one single copy in existence today in some vault someplace. So let's accept the evidence as it exists and not try to invent or fabricate or create something out of thin air, out of whole cloth. To do that is entirely futile. Chaplain Bob, any closing thoughts that you might have for us pertaining to this subject, please?
When you go to Europe, as a matter of fact, there's a country called Switzerland. They have 3 official languages. The eastern part speaks German, the southern part speaks Italian, and the western part of Switzerland speaks French. So basically, Greek was the common language of the day of Jesus. Then later on, the Roman Empire rose. Their language was Latin. There were 3 main languages spoken in the area of Israel around Jerusalem. The learned, I guess you could say the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they all knew Hebrew. The common people all knew Greek, and the Romans knew Latin. But from Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, all the way to Revelation, was written in Greek.
Parts of the New Testament have been preserved in more manuscripts than any other ancient work in all of history, having some 6,000 complete or partial Greek manuscripts, some 10,000 Latin manuscripts, and over 9,000 preserved documents of the New Testament in various other ancient languages, including Syriac, Ethiopic, Coptic, and Armenian languages. The dates for these manuscripts range as far back as circa 95 years after the death of Christ. They were written on papyrus, and the oldest copy are on fragments of the Revelator John's writings, again about 95 years after the death of Jesus Christ. Now, we should tell you that most of the manuscripts extant are many centuries removed from the originals.
Thanks for listening. If you found this information I've been able to share here to be informative and enlightening or helpful in some way, please reciprocate by hitting the like button. And meantime, we'd of course appreciate very much your clicking the subscribe button. And thanks as well for sharing the programs at my channel with people you know. We welcome your pertinent comments if you'll kindly register those in the comments section. And until next time, this is Gabriel Savant reminding you, a Bible owned but not read won't save anybody, and a Bible read but not obeyed won't save anybody either.
The BIBLE, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth.